I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime, and this is Currents.
Brooklyn's got two. Now Manhattan has its first basilica.
They want to know if this is still a vibrant, welcoming, effective parish. And of course, we could assure them that it is.
Plus, Catholic in a Muslim land. We'll get one perspective.
I wasn't sure what to expect, but when I did arrive there, I was interacting with Muslims that were my age and interacted with their families very similarly to the way that I interact with my own family.
And you may not believe what one woman did to save money at her company.
I told them that I was going to have to let somebody go, and I told them that that person was me.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. For a church building, it's a rare and a prestigious distinction. Out of all the Catholic churches in the U.S., only 68 of them are basilicas. It's a status granted by the Pope.
And the Archdiocese of New York got its very first basilica yesterday as Old St. Patrick's Cathedral in Manhattan's Little Italy neighborhood was formally given that designation. And we were there for the grand occasion.
The Congregation for Divine Worship and the Discipline of the Sacraments, in virtue of faculties granted to it by the Supreme Pontiff, Pope Benedict XVI, most willingly bestows the title and dignity of a minor basilica to the parish church dedicated to St. Patrick Bishop in New York, at one time adorned with the eminent title of cathedral.
A basilica is an honorarium given to important churches that have some significance in the history of the Catholic Church and in the archdiocese or diocese in which they serve.
In filling out the forms to have this made a basilica, the officials in Rome don't only ask about the past, they ask about the now, because they want to know if this is still a vibrant, welcoming, effective parish. And of course, we could assure them that it is.
I thought of it, and I conferred with Cardinal Egan and conferred with a lot of people, and I said, we've just celebrated 200 years as a diocese. You all were part of that in 2008. That's why Pope Benedict XVI came. And I said, why don't we continue that dynamism and that momentum of the bicentennial, and why not look to the first cathedral, the cornerstone laid the very year of the establishment of the diocese in 1808. Why don't we make that a basilica?
The name basilica, the title, is largely ceremonial. There will be some new accoutrements, the umbellinum, the tintinnabulum, the bell.
The umbrella, the bell, and the coat of arms are unique to each basilica and are commemorative of the connection to His Holy Father.
If the Pope were to come to New York, he would definitely visit his basilica. This is his church in New York.
Drinking a cup of cappuccino at a table with young people that I've never met before, asked the inevitable question, what is a basilica? And I told them about the ancient Roman architecture, and I told them about our history, the wall, the crypt below the church. I explained all this. I said to them, well, do you now know what a basilica is? And the young lady said, well, I guess it's like having a church that has whipped cream and cinnamon on top.
Well, I think it's great that the parish is received this new status, but also you can see the parish itself is changing so very much.
The Irish and now the Chinese, and the Italians and the Hispanics gravitate towards here.
Not only to see the basilica being consecrated, but also to see the people in the basilica was very inspiring.
The church is a teacher. She's a mother, the Holy Mother Church, we call her. She's a good teacher, and she, like any good teacher, she uses audiovisual aids. She uses teachable moments. And this is one, just this title of a basilica that the church has in her teaching skill kit there to remind us of what the church is about, to say thanks, and to draw us closer to the Pope.
Well, congratulations to the Archdiocese yesterday. Definitely a time to celebrate.
For sure.
Although many are saying Old St. Patrick's is the first basilica in New York City, that is actually not the case at all. As the people of the Brooklyn Diocese know, there are two basilicas right here in our borough, St. James Cathedral in downtown Brooklyn and Our Lady of Perpetual Help in Sunset Park.
Okay, but Manhattan anyway.
Yes, the first one in Manhattan.
Okay. Stay tuned. There's much more current straight ahead. When we return, we'll have the day's headlines, including more lives lost in Iraq as the violence against Christians continues. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Coming up in a bit, a lot of businesses, are cutting back staff to save money in these tough economic times, but one boss actually made a very big sacrifice.
He certainly did. But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. Gunmen killed 2 more Christians in Baghdad over the weekend. Reports say the elderly couple were in their home when the men stormed in and shot them. It's the latest in a string of attacks that have claimed the lives of dozens of Iraqi Christians. In the wake of increased violence against religious minorities in the Middle East, Pope Benedict spoke out today at the Vatican. We get details on that from Rome Reports.
Benedict XVI called for the respect of human rights in Iraq and Egypt. The Pope asked Catholics to pray during Advent to resolve these situations of violence, intolerance, and suffering, and hope that the memory of the birth of Jesus brings consolation, reconciliation, and peace.
Il rispetto dei diritti di tutti è il presupposto per la civile convivenza. La nostra preghiera al Signore e la nostra solidarietà possano portare speranza a coloro che si trovano nella sofferenza.
The Pope spoke of the continuous attacks against Christians and Muslims that occur in Iraq. He also recalled the recent violence in Egypt. A few weeks ago, 2 Coptic Christians were killed by the police, and 50 were wounded during a demonstration calling for the construction of a church in the city of Giza. The Pope also spoke about the victims of human trafficking and remembered the 250 African refugees who were kidnapped for over a month in the northern Sinai Desert area of Egypt that borders Israel. One of those kidnapped called Vatican Radio asking for urgent help and said that they spent days without food and were kept in chains. The Pope recommended that during Advent, the preparation time for Christmas, be spent reading the Bible. He added that faith is strengthened when enlightened by the Word of God.
The liturgy of the second Sunday in Advent invites us to prepare our hearts for the great mystery of the Incarnation. May Jesus, born of the Virgin Mary, grant us His grace, so that during this time of Advent we may grow even more faithful to His unfailing love.
Before the end of the Angelus, the Pope recalled the solemnity of the Immaculate Conception. On that day, Benedict XVI will go to the Spanish Steps in Rome to pray before the statue of the Virgin.
The Pope also met with the leader of the World Council of Churches over the weekend to talk about violence against Christians in the Middle East and Christian unity. It was the first meeting between Pope Benedict and Reverend Dr. Olav Tveit. Details are sketchy, but reports say the 2 leaders discussed how to support Christians in Iraq amid the increased violence there. The pontiff reportedly also recommended that the Bible be at the center of strengthening visible Christian unity worldwide. In this country, as senators continue debate over a possible repeal of the military's Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, leaders disagree over when they may actually take a vote. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said over the weekend he thinks debate will be pushed into 2011, while Independent Senator Joe Lieberman said today the Senate should stay in session until the policy is repealed. Meantime, some military chaplains are voicing their concern over the possible end to the ban on openly homosexual service members, while others say it should not be an issue. Kate Baldwin spoke to chaplains on both sides.
Some of the most intense and divergent views on gays serving openly in the military, according to the Pentagon's Don't Ask, Don't Tell report, exist among military chaplains.
There was very clearly a concern out there by chaplains that they would somehow be treated adversely if they held or espoused religious views that were contrary to the government's view if the law is repealed.
That is just one concern expressed by some of the military's spiritual advisors.
The reason we were against the repeal is simply because of moral issues.
Retired Army Chaplain Douglas Lee is one of dozens of retired chaplains who wrote to President Obama and Defense Secretary Robert Gates opposing the repeal. They write, quote, "We believe that normalizing homosexual conduct in the armed forces will pose a significant threat to chaplains and service members' religious liberty."
I fear, and many others fear, that down the road, knowing the other agenda items that are on the plate of those who are promoting a homosexual lifestyle. Down the road would be a concern that chaplains would be restricted from proclaiming their faith tenets.
But other military chaplains say it's just the opposite. Retired Air Force chaplain Jerry Ryan supports repealing the policy and says the bigger issue is discrimination.
The scriptures, the Gospels tell us that we need to love our neighbors as ourselves. And so if you provide ministry on that basis, you cannot reject somebody based on their sexual orientation or their lifestyle, but you have to love them as a human being.
Chaplain Ryan agrees with Defense Secretary Gates that safeguards are in place for service members and the chaplain corps to ensure that one person's religious views don't interfere with another's.
There is an obligation to care for all. But it also is clear that the chaplains are not going to be asked to teach something they don't believe in.
Despite the divergent opinions, a change in policy would have little impact on the chaplain corps, according to the report. Only 3 out of about 145 chaplains who participated suggested they would quit or leave if the law was changed.
And that report from Kate Baldwin.
Well, if you've been by the World Trade Center site in Lower Manhattan recently, no doubt you've seen the new buildings rising high above the ground. But on Sunday, about 70 families gathered at Ground Zero to protest one building that is not rising from the ashes, St. Nicholas Greek Orthodox Church. The church building was destroyed on 9/11, and talks with the Port Authority to cut a deal to rebuild fell apart last year. Members of the congregation lit candles and prayed for a way forward Sunday, the eve of the Feast of St. Nicholas. Well, the Bible says no one will know the day or the hour when Jesus will return to earth, but one group in Connecticut says they actually do know. Members are trying to spread the word that, according to them, Jesus is coming back next year. Mark Robbins has the story.
I think they're talking about God, like how he's coming to earth again.
Yeah. You think he'll be here on May 21st?
I think so. I think he's coming pretty soon.
Nah, I don't think so. Nah. I think it's like a church giveaway or something.
The Park City is on a list with Atlanta, Nashville, Omaha, and others. The billboards are the work of WeCanKnow.com. A spokesman sent News 8 a statement saying these billboards are to help present information from the Bible that shows Jesus will return on May 21st, 2011. We hope people would see the billboards and go to the scriptures for themselves to study. It's certainly sparking thought among those who read them.
I feel it, I feel it in my, like a vibe. I feel it. He's coming.
You think you could be wrong?
Probably, you never know. It's a possibility.
Yeah. Are you ready if that's true?
God help us all.
That's reporter Mark Robbins there. The group says they're not trying to scare anyone, but they hope their billboards will get people to read the Bible. And finally, the Vatican's Christmas tree went up this weekend, and as the holiday fast approaches, families around the world are heading out to pick their own perfect tree. But do you know exactly what it means to decorate a tree at Christmas? Rome Reports gives us the background.
The Christmas tree is not just a decorative element. For Christians especially, it has a strong meaning.
This tree shows that even in the heart of winter, when everything is dry and the trees have no leaves, it's still green, and so a tree which symbolizes life. And this life has a name, Jesus Christ.
The Christmas tree is a symbol of life and hope that is decorated with ornaments and lights around the world. The decoration shows the importance of the birth of Jesus.
Jesus became poor, born in Bethlehem, a place of poverty, but it was a humble place with meaning. It's a poverty which leads to great wealth, to spiritual abundance, gifts, vitality, and peace.
The first time a Christmas tree was placed in the Vatican was in 1982 at the request of John Paul II. He wanted both the Nativity and the tree so that the two main signs of Christmas were very visible in St. Peter's Square.
Everybody's decorating their tree in my neighborhood. I see them coming home with the cars, trees on top of the cars every day. All right, well, stay tuned. There's much more Currents coming up.
Just ahead, one film festival went places, literally. We'll hear from a woman who helped bring it to a predominantly Muslim land.
I found all of the young Muslims that I interacted with to be very committed to their religion, and I had no choice but to respect them for that.
Welcome back. Well, as we reported earlier, the killing yesterday of 2 Christians in Baghdad is another grim reminder of the price many are paying for remaining in Iraq. In fact, fear and uncertainty are causing many Christians to try and flee the country.
But what about neighboring countries? What is it like to be a Catholic in a predominantly Muslim country? You're about to meet somebody who knows. Earlier this year, Gina Alioto from Sacred Heart St. Stephen's Parish in Carroll Gardens spent time working in Doha, Qatar. Qatar borders Saudi Arabia and is not far from Iraq. Nearly 80% of the population there is Muslim. Now, Christians are such a small minority that it wasn't until 2008 that the country even allowed Mass to be celebrated. And it was there in Qatar that Gina found herself this fall, working as an events coordinator at the Doha Tribeca Film Festival. Afterwards, she got back and she sat down to talk about that experience with our Natalia Ortiz.
Gina Alioto, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
So Gina, you were the hospitality events coordinator at the, let me see if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Doha, right, Tribeca Film Festival.
That's correct.
Tell me a little bit briefly about the event and what your role was.
I was part of a team of 3 in the hospitality department, and we managed, designed, and executed all food and beverage operations for the entire Tribeca Film Festival out in Doha.
Okay. And how is this film festival a little bit different than the Tribeca Film Festival here in New York?
Well, first of all, it's in the middle of the desert.
Right.
And it's just a different audience. Okay. Our audience is predominantly Muslim, being in the Middle East, and we had lots of Middle Eastern filmmakers participating in the festival.
Okay, so what is a Catholic girl doing all the way over there in the middle of the desert in a predominantly Muslim country? Tell me how that was.
Yeah, well, I was doing event planning, which is my passion, and it was very interesting because I wasn't sure what to expect. But when I did arrive there, I was interacting with Muslims that were my age and interacted with their families very similarly to the way that I interact with my own family. So it was a great experience.
What particularly struck you about their faith or about the way they practice their faith?
I found all of the young Muslims that I interacted with to be very committed to their religion, and I had no choice but to respect them for that. And it was very interesting to learn about their traditions. We arrived directly in the middle of Ramadan, which was a month-long religious holiday, so that was very interesting to learn those customs.
How are you viewed in terms of, because this faith can sometimes look differently upon women, did you feel like there was any difference in the way they were looking at you?
Well, when we did first start interacting with some of our vendors, it was a little bit difficult to be taken seriously as a young woman in the event planning industry. But once they realized that we were on the same level of experiences they are, we actually made lots of friends out there.
Okay, great. And how was practicing Catholicism out there for you? Did you get a chance to practice your faith? Was there a place for you to do that? And
there was a church in Doha. It was a personal choice of mine not to visit the church. But also I didn't compromise my faith, and I did not attend any mosques or religious ceremonies, Muslim religious ceremonies either.
Okay,
So
and why was it a personal choice of yours not to go to Mass?
I wasn't sure if it would be safe for a Christian to go to church. I did not want to draw more attention to myself out there. I'm not sure if that was an ignorant decision, but it was what I felt comfortable with. That didn't mean that I didn't say my prayers every night before I went to sleep, or would say a prayer before events, or I still had my faith, and I exhibited my faith through other channels, such as my demeanor and how I carried myself there.
Okay, and so you said that you interacted a lot, your colleagues over there in this event were also predominantly Muslim, correct? Yes. So how was it interacting with them, and what was that relationship like?
It was great relationships with young Muslims out there, and I found them to be very similar to people of my own faith. It's just what their beliefs were very different.
And how did you get involved in this event?
A former colleague of mine invited me to come out to Doha to plan events with her.
Okay, and so if you could leave just one last message to our viewers about the Muslim community or the Muslim faith, what would you say, you know, for people who've never been to a country that's predominantly Muslim, what would you think is something significant to leave in their I guess in their ears?
While I think that it's extremely important to stay committed to our Catholic faith and take very seriously where we stand as Catholics in the world, I also think that it's important that we learn about other faiths as well, and without compromising our own beliefs.
Okay, would you say that that's something that's possible to do? I mean, that sounds like a balance that can be tricky.
I think it's a very difficult balance, and it's also the reason for all of these wars that are occurring.
All right, well, thank you so much. We are wrapping up, but thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Well, I guess Qatar is actually going to be hosting the World Cup soccer matches in 2022. So that's definitely going to draw a lot of people over there, and I'm sure people of all different faiths.
Absolutely, absolutely. Big news last week. The U.S. lost out on it again on the bid to host it.
I know. Try again. Well, stay right where you are. There's much more current straight ahead.
When we return, eat your heart out, Donald Trump. This woman said, "You're fired," but wait till you hear who she fired.
We thought it was a joke at first because she's always joking.
Well, last week's jobless figures did not do much to spread holiday cheer. Unemployment climbed back up once again to 9.8%, and the economic recovery for many is barely being felt.
Which is what makes our last story tonight so remarkable. A Florida businesswoman facing a tough choice in a very bad economy had to lay off a member of her staff. But what she did next shocked everyone. The story from Heather So and True.
Lola Gonzalez is known as a prankster within her company. But when she walked in to tell her 9 employees someone had to be laid off, no one was laughing.
I told them that I had to make a decision, that I was going to have to let somebody go. And so I took my time and I looked at them one by one and told them how much they meant to me. And I told them that that person was me.
We thought it was a joke at first because she's always joking.
But this was no joke. Gonzalez started accurate background checks in Ocala to help companies screen job candidates over a decade ago. Lydia Estremera has worked here for 6 years.
First split second there, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because I'm one of those that, you know, my husband, he's been out of work for about a year now. So I was like, okay, if she's cutting somebody off, what about if it's me? What am I going to do? I says, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my family?
Gonzalez says she couldn't bear to fire one of her employees. So instead, she laid off herself to save their jobs.
My employees are the most trusted. I mean, they've been here for years. They've been loyal. They've been dedicated. I mean, it was just the right thing to do, in my opinion.
Some of the money that was going towards Gonzalez's 6-figure salary is now being reinvested back into the business. They have a new mobile fingerprinting machine that they're taking on the road as a way to try to drum up more revenue in tough times. Gonzalez says she's learned surviving this sputtering economy is all about getting creative and urges other small business owners to have faith.
Faith that if you're providing the best customer service, you're providing your services at the best cost, and you're taking care of your clients, you're taking care of your employees, it's going to be okay.
Well, there is some encouraging news about Lola Gonzalez. Right after she fired herself, she actually found a new job as a social worker. She says she would consider going back to her human resources support company once the economy recovers. So she did. You know, she was saying, oh, it's going to be okay, and it turns out maybe it kind of is.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, because she had started the company herself and she was the one in the position to make the decision, it might have been a little easier, if you will, to fire herself in that regard. But still, being willing to take the bullet and put your money where your mouth is, quite literally in that, you know, instance, and then having the chutzpah to go out there and find another job for yourself right away. I mean, she obviously is a good, clear-thinking businesswoman.
That's right. She's got something right going on, you know, in her head and in her heart as well. She's, you know, focusing her attention in the right place.
Well, that is it for tonight. Coming up tomorrow, a pro-life ad for Advent that is sparking controversy. We'll talk with someone who's behind it. Meantime, remember, you can always watch us online at currentsny.net, and you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter as well.
If you have an idea for a story, maybe you just want to drop us a line, you can do that at dropusaline@currentsny.net. Until next time, I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great night.